Hi, everyone. I am so excited that I have another guest for you. I'm always trying to make sure that you know all the people in the world that can help you with different parts of transitioning and going from high school to college, or just what do you do in high school, or how do you become the greatest young adults you can be. It does take a lot of people to try to figure these things out, and a lot of people that you can work with to help you. So I have with me today Dan Jordan, and he works in higher education. And I think that this is going to be so important for the listeners today because of my all the clients that I have anxiety or some other kinds of disabilities sometimes, and they maybe in high school had a 504 plan, or maybe even sometimes they had an IEP, but then it's different when you go to higher education. So I want you to know all the things that you need to know for that process if your child is doing that. And this is even if they're going to go to a tech college, if they're going to go to plumbing school, or any of the things, any education that happens after high school. So, Dan Jordan, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be on.
Sure. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself first. Like, what do you do at the college or higher education level? And why is this topic about helping kids important to you?
Yeah, great question. I have been a therapist on a college campus for 15 years. 10 of those years, I was also serving as a dual role in accessibility. So, any student that had any kind of disability concerns, I was the person they came to get the access that they needed, the accommodations that they needed, other kinds of adjustments. I was the person that did that for over a decade, actually. And at the same time, the reason why this is really important, at the same time that I got the job on a college campus, my son had been diagnosed maybe 6 months afterwards with like dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. So
Mm.
I was seeing the start, and then I was seeing also in college, I was seeing the other side. And having done the other side for a little bit of time before my son was diagnosed, seeing the deficits of all the information gaps that students would have, all the lack of self advocacy kind of skills that starts with the information. It starts with being very aware and coming to the office and saying, my mom wanted me to be here. Great
Mhm.
start. Perfect start. And I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing these students not advocate for themselves in class. I'm seeing them delay coming to even get to me to get the accommodations. I'm seeing them not come to to the counseling center. I'm seeing them not go to the health and wellness center. I'm seeing them not get academic support, not talking to their teachers. The self-advocacy piece was just this domino that just one knocked over, and it just knocked over the rest of them, and they weren't advocating for themselves in all these different areas. And I was like, that just can't happen to my
Mhm.
son. That's just not going to happen. And I felt bad in some way. I felt a certain kind of way about being his dad. I was like, wow, well, there's a privilege because he's got that and he'll be able to do that. But what about all the other ones that don't have a parent that works in accessibility? What about all the other ones that don't have a parent that works on a college campus that can access that kind of information? And there's such a massive gap in
Mhm.
information. And so that's why I wrote the book. It's why I have the podcast. It's why I exist in a nutshell, is to provide a lot of that information and provide, like, close that gap in a very big way.
I love that. And I'm going to put links to all that in the show notes so people can go find all of that stuff. But I worked in public education in a high school, and I worked with kids who had IEPs and or 504s. And I don't think any parent ever knew what was next, or like, how do we get these accommodations when we go to college? And when you're talking about kids not advocating for themselves, I would tell the students, you have to be the person to go talk to your teachers, to the disability center, to the counseling center, all the things. And I think that it starts in high school. Like, they need to be starting to advocate for themselves there to kind of practice those skills. And I've been telling parents this, and you will probably agree, but if you have some tips, let us know. But I'm telling parents that we need to start in high school asking them to do some things on their own, making doctor's appointments for themselves, or
Oh yeah.
just navigating things on their own with our support, of course. Or
Mhm.
even I had so many of my students when I was at school that would, when I would say, well, you need to call that office and ask them the question, because they would be like, they would be going on to college, but they would ask me a question about, well, will this college let me do this? Or can I do this? I'm like, well, we need to call that office. And they were just like, I don't even know how to make a phone call. I don't know
Right.
how to do this.
Hmm.
And because they don't make phone calls, they don't have to call people. They can text or look at it online or whatever. So I would say, okay, here's the number, and you're going to call from my office phone,
Right.
and I'll listen and I'll, prompt you if I can think of like a question you need to ask, or, and I said, here's a piece of paper for you to write down notes about what they say. And, I'll watch your notes and I'll listen to this whole thing and I'll support you and help you figure this out, but you have to do it on your own. And then I would tell parents, this is how you need to parent during these last couple of years of high school is you make the phone call, you inquire by the email, and I will support you and help you, but you have to do it yourself because you have to learn how to do it.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of that I see just with that young adult kind of phase.
Mm,
And it does start in high school. And the more you can let them stumble, not really
mhm,
fail, because it's just kind
mhm,
of like it's awkward. You've never done it before. That
mhm,
whole doctor appointment thing is a great example because I see that all the time on a college
mhm,
campus. What do I say? I'm like,
mhm.
okay, I have to walk them through the same thing.
Yeah.
And here, let's walk through it beforehand so you know what to say. You can write down the questions. You can kind of tease that out just with a
Mhm,
little bit of support. But here, take out your phone. Let's do it now. Like that kind
mhm,
of stuff. And once they do it, they're like, oh, okay. Well, that wasn't so bad. I'm like, yeah, it's not.
mhm,
It's just that difficulty doing it at first. So what
mhm,
I tell parents is follow a plan for I do, we do, you do. And it's kind of that support thing. Like you watch me do it, then I'll kind of walk you through it, and then you do it. We'll do it together. And then
mhm,
you can make the next one on your own. And sometimes that's the case. So you have
mhm,
a source of support just in case something kind of goes on, or there's a question, like you meet somebody who just kind of throws, a question and just goes sideways. You have that support
mhm,
for them right there. Or they kind of stumble and fall, and there's kind of a little bit of discomfort there. And you get to walk through that. That's okay. And it can be with simple stuff, it can be with really easy things. Like they may never have ordered pizza over the phone before.
mhm,
Great.
mhm,
Here's the number. I got to run to the store. You're going to order pizza. This is what we're going to do. So you
mhm,
follow that kind of that thing. They may never, if they do have medications, they may never have talked to the pharmacist.
mhm.
That's a good one. You should
Yeah,
know.
that's
You should
excellent.
know. And you should also know that it's legal for you to ask to speak to the pharmacist. That's why you have to sign off on that. And
Mhm,
you should ask questions about your medications. When do I take it? What's the best time to take it? Is there anything I need to avoid? Is there any side effects that would happen because I'm taking, a multivitamin or something like that? You
mhm,
should always ask those questions no matter what.
mhm,
And if you have never done that before, that could be a little bit of discomfort
mhm,
just because you haven't done it. But it's okay, discomfort. It's
mhm.
okay, discomfort. Like if I pick up a guitar and I've never played guitar before, it's going to be a little clunky,
Yeah.
but it's going to get a lot easier
Mhm,
once you practice and you do that. So doing the I do, we do, you do kind of thing, that's kind of at home. You can even do it, if they are at college and they're like, how do I set up a bank account?
mhm,
Okay, cool, great stuff. Let's walk through that. And I can do that over FaceTime or something like that if that's the
mhm,
case. So having the support is good. I'm a big proponent of letting them fail.
mhm,
100%. Big
mhm.
proponent of it. But failure from ignorance is not, I'm not a proponent of that at all. I'm
Right.
not like, here, throw them the car keys and you've never told them how to drive. You've never spent the hours in with them to tell them how to drive and you just throw them the car keys. That's not okay. And it's not
Mhm,
okay with even simple stuff. So give them the information so that they're well informed,
mhm,
and then they can make a choice that is well informed for themselves, whether that's talking to a pharmacist or not. Why are you uncomfortable talking to the pharmacist? This is your medication. Like
Mhm.
your meds don't just magically appear in your pill case Monday through Saturday or Sunday through
Mhm.
Saturday. It just doesn't magically appear that way. These
Mhm.
are the steps we have to go through in order to do that. And in college, you're going to be the one to do this entirely on your own.
Mhm.
So, as much as that might be discomfort now, imagine what it's going to be like if you don't know how to do that kind of stuff and you have to do that stuff and
Mhm.
it's necessary for you and you're thrown into that position and you've just not done that before because you've chosen not to. Hmm,
Mhm.
that's I can still support that as much as
Mhm.
possible, but that's a different circumstance. And that imagine what that does to your anxiety and stress.
Mhm.
Even just as somebody who may not even have anxiety and stress, that's going to throw you off.
Sure, definitely. What are you seeing on the college campus or the campus that you're on where anxiety is concerned? How is it manifesting with students in college?
Across the board.
I
Um,
figured so.
it's before COVID, it had been going up statistically, maybe 2, 3 points every single year.
Mhm.
Every single time they would do one of those like biannual surveys, the anxiety by far outranks every single other mental health issue
Mhm.
by 50%. I think the
Mhm.
next one down the line is depression. And sometimes they occur together. It's like water and wet. You can't really separate them. But
Mhm.
sometimes, that's the case. But depression is like, 50% less than that. And the other ones are like in single digits after that.
Mm.
Um, and it just gets lower and lower and lower. But anxiety is by far the most prevalent issue on a college campus. By
Mhm.
far. COVID made it worse.
Mhm. Yeah.
COVID made it worse.
That's what I've been telling people too. Like I was seeing it in high school way before COVID, but it made it worse because they could stay home and those that were sort of feeling forced to go out to school every day or forced to go out of their house every day and they were just sort of managing it with white knuckles or whatever. Then when they didn't have to do it anymore, when it was time to go back, they were like, I'm not doing it.
Right.
And that was very difficult for for schools to handle and I'm sure parents too. So, if a child has anxiety and it hasn't been diagnosed, but now they're in college and they're really struggling and they are not managing it well, what would be some steps that they could take at that point to get some help in their classes?
It's a broad question. Let's narrow it down.
Okay.
Do you want to get help because you have anxiety, or are we talking you want some help academically, or do you want help just with the accommodations piece?
Hmm.
Those are three separate kind of areas.
Well, and I love that you're breaking that down because I'm looking at it as just one issue. So I'm sure other people are too. Well, let's talk about if they need help with anxiety, first of all, like just that they are
Cool.
anxious and they're not handling it.
Gotcha. And that's a very common issue. Like I said, it's one of the most prevalent issues on a college campus, but there's a lot of different causes.
Mhm.
Like if you're a college freshman, you go on a college campus for the first time. Yeah, you're going to feel a certain kind of way. You
Mhm.
really are. You've never been there, done that. You don't know what it's like. You've never had a college schedule before. That's weird. You've never had the academic pressures that come with college. And September kind of lulls you into a little bit of security. And then October hits like a brick. And you're like, whoa, whoa, wait a second. What just happened? And all of that is probably the first time. If you're not prepared for that, that can really throw you off. That's just sort
Mhm.
of a general sort of overview of like what happens
Right.
in college transition. So
Mhm.
being prepared for some of that is one thing. Knowing that that's going to happen is one thing. So expecting that, expecting
Mhm.
things to get hard in October, I got to set myself up in September. But if you're not ready for that or you're having trouble with that, yes, you can go see somebody in the counseling services center. You can
Mhm.
do that 100%. And sooner rather than later. Most of the time, students will wait until mid-October and go, "Whoa, I'm behind on assignments. I didn't turn this in. I'm failed like two of my first tests, and something's not going right." Well, it wasn't going right 4 weeks ago. You knew that.
Hmm.
So I'm a proponent of as soon as something seems to be going wrong, go do it. Or
Right.
if you know you have that and you don't deal with pressure really well, if you know that about yourself, go to the counseling services center right off the bat
Mm.
and I'm doing this kind of protectively, right?
Hmm.
I'm doing it in a
Hmm.
way that's preventative because I know I'm going to have that pressure and I just need to build those skills. But if you didn't do that, that's okay. There are some simple skills to learn to do that just to get the mental health support. And most college campuses are going to have that support for you. It might be limited time frames for
Hmm.
that. You may get like 6 sessions or something like that, and then they have to
Yeah.
refer you out. If you're going to a college in state, you might be able to use like a doctor on demand or something like that to to do that, to get that kind of support for yourself. But the college counseling services center, the college center for that, is probably your first choice, and doing that sooner rather than later, because once you kind of do the paperwork, you get in, there might be a wait list, it might take you 2 weeks just to get to see somebody. Now it's November.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you if you have the same wait lists there as my other clients are finding, just generally, like trying to get into therapists and counselors in their area. They're not able to get in for a long time.
Correct. Yeah, and this is one of the effects of COVID. This is one of those. There's a lot of people who understand I need help, which is awesome.
Hmm.
Totally for that. Go get the help. 100% get the help. And people knowing and getting the benefit from speaking to another human being who can help guide their journey to being better in whatever way that is for them.
Hmm.
That's a great thing. But there are wait lists on the outside with private counselors or with agencies or even doctor on demand. Like find
Hmm.
somebody who's on that platform or any kind of the other ones that are the online platforms. You are going to have some type of wait, and that's difficult. But you can also look for information possibly for things to do. I can tell you exactly what to do. Like right now, I could just read it right off so that people who are listening to this don't have to, they at least have a couple of things to do.
Sure, we'll do that. Tell us what those steps are.
It's not complicated stuff, but sometimes simple doesn't mean easy.
Hmm.
And it's I tell this to my clients all the time. You have to practice. You've got to make this a priority and you've got to practice.
Hmm.
And I also tell my young adult students, whatever you do, do not make things worse.
Hmm.
Do not do the things that you know are hindering your progress. Like I was really anxious and I didn't have the assignment, but I didn't go to class. I'm like, no, bad idea. Okay, bad idea. We're not going to make stuff worse. So if you don't go to class, bottom
Hmm.
line, you got to go to class. I don't care what you wear. I don't care if you didn't
Hmm.
sleep the night before. I'm not interested in you taking notes. Go. Because if you
Hmm.
don't go, then you're feeling a certain kind of way about that. And that's
Yep.
not okay. So we're not going to add to the issue. We're not going to add to your self-esteem stuff. We're not going to add to the all the negative thoughts that happen with anxiety and all that stuff. We're not going to add to it. So
Hmm.
we're bottom line, we're just going to do some simple stuff. One, eat breakfast,
Hmm.
which a lot of people don't do. I'm not a breakfast person. I'm like, okay, do you want anxiety or not?
Hmm.
Bottom line, do you want anxiety or not? And if you eat protein, in the
Hmm.
morning, eat some eggs, eat something with fat like toast with butter, bacon, sausage, something like that. Eat it. Why? Here's why. If you don't eat it, your blood sugar tanks. And
Hmm.
now you have these things that mimic sort of like the anxiety symptoms. I'm restless. I'm not thinking clearly. My mind is racing, right? All these different things. And then what do you do at lunch? You binge. And then you feel like crap in the afternoon.
Hmm.
Okay, not okay. And possibly that blood sugar fluctuations that go all over the place, that's a cause of some of the anxiety. And you can prevent some of that. You can prevent the perception of anxiety. You can prevent yourself from actually having more anxiety by just eating breakfast.
Hmm.
Levels out your blood sugar, stays with you all the time. Like, really, like how simple is that, right?
Yeah.
Simple. Like eat some oats, grab a granola bar and chew on it. Like
Mhm.
that's it, right? But you
Yeah.
also have to move.
Mm.
And if you want to get rid of some of the anxiety, you got to move. We know
Mm.
the health benefits of exercise. I'm not saying go to the gym and do, some hit workout or whatever. I'm saying
Right.
walk to class.
Mhm.
I'm saying understand what you're doing when you're walking to class. I'm saying for lunch, when you're done, go for a walk. I'm
Mhm.
saying at night, grab one of your roommates and go for a walk. I'm
Yeah.
saying make it fun. I'm saying have it be something that you do to get outside and do something and go for a walk.
Mhm.
Pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, then you have to move quicker, which means you might have to walk faster or you might have to, grab some people and play tag or something like that. You
Mhm.
got to run around. Or maybe that is when you go to the gym and you do hit the treadmill and you run because you got to
Mhm.
burn it off.
Yeah.
And if you don't, hmm, okay, well then you're probably going to have about 30% more. Just with those two things, you're probably going to burn off about 25%, 30% of your anxiety right off the bat.
Mm.
That's what
That's
I
so good.
see.
Yeah.
The other one is sleep.
Mhm.
You're not pulling all nighters. You're not staying up until 2 o'clock in the morning, even though that's kind of what some people do because
Yeah.
that's when they're doing their social kind of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not for you.
Mhm.
Not for you. And not if you want to do really well academically.
Mhm.
If you don't get proper sleep, depression and anxiety are going to get worse. And then you're in a doom loop. And
Mm.
we can prevent that. We can
Yeah.
certainly prevent that. We can prevent that by getting really good sleep. Need your 7 to 8, 9 hours. Each individual is very different in that respect. So those are just some three things. You got to move, you got to eat breakfast, and you got to get sleep. Now that sounds really basic, but throw yourself into a situation where you're not really sure how you're going to respond because you've never been there and you
Mhm.
don't know what that's like for commuters. Even still, even if you're commuting to a local college, still it kind of throws you off. It's a little bit better to do because you have that
Mhm.
support, and some students need that. Great, make a great choice for yourself, make a healthy choice. It may not be a choice that you really like,
Mhm.
but I'm not interested in what you like. I'm interested in what's healthy for you. I'm
Yeah.
interested in what's good for you. And sometimes those are hard choices. Welcome to being an adult. Like bottom line, that's what it is. Like you
Yeah.
have all these different things like that you have to make sometimes some really bad choices from really bad, choices that you have, and you have to make the
Mhm.
best one from those kind of crappy choices.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's the case. Yeah, welcome to your major. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I have to take all these different do I really have to take organic chemistry to be pre-med or be a nurse? Yeah, you got to take
Mhm.
organic chem. Sure you do.
Mhm.
Class sucks most of the time, right?
Right.
But you still got to do it, right? So you have to pick and choose between these difficult kind of things,
Mhm.
and that's adulthood.
Yeah.
Sorry to tell you, but that's realistic. And if you're making an informed choice, but if you're eating, right, you're
Mhm.
exercising, you're getting good sleep, guess what? Those choices suck a lot less.
Yeah.
They really do. You're able to
Mhm.
get there. You're able to get to class and go, you know what? I don't like organic chemistry, but you know what? It's better because I have 30% less anxiety about it.
Mhm.
And now I can think. Now I can problem solve because I'm
Mhm.
not in the middle of my brain with all the anxiety. I'm not running like a hamster on a wheel going nowhere and trying to figure out what I'm doing and not really knowing how to do that with all the negative thoughts. And now you can't sleep. Now you don't want to eat because your appetite is suppressed because you're so anxious and so stressed. And
Mhm.
now it feels like you're nauseous every time you put something in your stomach because you're so tight and you're so anxious. Yeah, let's avoid that. Let's
Yeah.
avoid that entirely. You can just
Exactly.
set this up in September. You can set this up now in high school to do this kind of
Mhm.
stuff. You can set these practices up for yourself to make sure that you've been there, done that. And then when you hit September, yeah, you can have a couple of late nights and stay up with friends and do that kind of stuff. You
Mhm.
can watch the sunrise the first week or so. Sure, why not? Why
Mhm.
not? Why not? We've all done that.
Oh, sure.
Sure. There's some of the
Mhm.
best moments I've ever some of the best memories. Like, yeah, we're sitting on top of a mountain watching the sunrise. Great night. And
Yeah.
all this great bunch of friends, and I'm watching the sunrise. Fabulous. That's not every day.
Mhm.
That's not every day.
Yeah.
That's what also makes it special. So,
Mhm.
yeah, there's some stuff, but also know that what works for you And if you know what works for you, because you've been there, done that, you've tried different things, you kind of
Right.
know what works for you. You know what works to keep your anxiety lower because you kind of
Mhm.
know what triggers it. You
Yeah.
know what to look for. You know if it's certain times of day, certain times of the month, or certain classes, certain professors, whatever it is. Certain things will automatically go ahead and trigger that anxiety be a little bit more. Great. If you know that, cool, let's deal with it. And that's where you get into, going to the counseling center and learning how to do that if you have not done that before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the first piece.
Well, I was so thankful to my daughter was diagnosed with anxiety when she was in college. And
Mm,
I don't think that kids were really diagnosed with anxiety when she was little. And I remember she was very outgoing and she was, never met a stranger and all these things. So I just kept thinking she can't have anxiety because I was picturing, even though I'm
right,
a mental
right,
health person with anxieties in bed or they're hiding or they're shy or they're, all these things. And she wasn't any of those things. But when she was diagnosed in college and then got medication, it was the best thing that ever happened because it was
right,
like, oh, all of that stuff finally made sense to her. And she wasn't sleeping because of anxiety and,
right,
all these things. So I'm very thankful to that college campus. And she was outgoing enough that she wasn't afraid to go get the help. She just knew something's not right here and I've got to take care of it. So
correct,
I was very glad for that. And when you were talking about you have to do stuff that you don't want to do, I used to tell high school kids that were like, I hate school. And, they were never doing it. They would never do their work. They would just have their head down in class all the time. And I was said, if you are going to come here, which they were coming all the time, they just weren't doing anything. I said, just make school like your practice for adulthood because you're going to have to do stuff you don't want to do. So just do the homework, even when you don't want to do it, because that's what you have to do when you're an adult. Or, just listen to the teacher when it's time because that's what you're supposed to do, even when you don't want to, even when it's boring. And so it's like I
right,
was thinking that same thing that's how I was teaching the high schoolers like, you're going to have to do this. And the other thing that you had said that I teach all my clients is that everyone has uncomfortable emotions about stuff. Even the most outgoing person who's on stage or the public speaker or the person who has 500 friends, they still feel uncertain when they're doing something new. They
correct.
still feel worried sometimes that do people really like me? Am I really funny? All the things. And like
Yep,
I just think that people who have more anxiety think that the people who don't act like they have anxiety don't have anything and that there's something wrong with them that, well, I'm
right.
not, I don't work right, but they do. And I
Yeah,
try to
yeah.
normalize that. The very first session I have with any of my clients, I'm like, guess what? Everyone has anxiety.
Hmm.
Some people manage it really well and other people don't. And like,
Correct.
this is the stuff that we have to work on. And that yucky feeling that you feel inside of your stomach or your head or wherever you experience anxiety or that tightness, everybody has that sometimes and nothing has gone wrong. And I love that you talk about planning ahead of time. Like, oh, it feels pretty good right now, but maybe in a month it's not going to feel so good.
Correct.
Making that not be something wrong. Like, oh, something's wrong now that I don't feel the way I did before. No, nothing's gone wrong. This is just the next phase or this is just the next part. And you still need to move forward in that. So I love that. Well, we're getting towards the end of our time, but you have a checklist for how to get accommodations, like what to look for, what to have with you. And you even explain in the emails that come afterwards, which I've been looking through those because I signed
Yeah,
up for it because I wanted this checklist and it's really good. Like making those things on the checklist an actual question about all the colleges that you're thinking about going to, or even if you're already in college or your child's already in college and now they're starting to experience some things where they might need to get extra time or, have something to help them in the academic setting, you could still use these same things. You're just going to be a little bit behind and still go through the checklist and try to make sure that you follow all of those, that your child follows all of those things. And because they're going to have to advocate for themselves once they're on the campus. And even if you're talking to colleges while your kid's still in high school, your child should still be the one doing the major part of calling those offices or making sure that they have the things that they need for those particular schools or areas that they're going to go to.
correct.
And I'm going to give the email that, or not the email, the link to your checklist so that parents can get that, or even teens or young adults who are listening can get that so that they have that information, and then they can just follow along with the emails about what different things to do and listen to your podcast and read your book. What is the name of your book again?
Oh God, it's a massive title. So basically, I'm just going to shorten it. It's on Amazon. It's called Self-Advocacy for Higher Education, Step-by-Step Guide to Preparing to Request Accommodations in College.
I love that. I think that that should be on every school counselor's shelf for sure if they're working with kids who have IEPs or 504s, which they probably are, because there's a lot of that in schools both ways. So I
Yes.
think that would be amazing that they could share that with families because, and I've already shared this with some families that I know that have students with different neurodivergent traits. So we want to make sure that everybody has this information. Well, do you have
Yeah.
anything
Thank
else
you.
that you want to share with us before you go?
Just to say that if you're using the checklist, which I highly encourage, there's also another one that's college services for that, which is really important, especially for students who are neurodivergent, to look at that and assess. That can help with college planning and which school you're going to. This is the we do part.
Hmm.
It's kind of the we do part. You don't want it to be I do. Yes, you
Mhm.
can download the checklist, but it's the we do part
Mhm.
that you want to include your young adult in that entire process of looking at colleges slightly differently. And if they are going to get accommodations, at least you have a checklist, but some students choose not to. Not a good plan. Let's encourage them to get the information so that they can. You can always not use the accommodations, but it's a
Right.
lot easier if you got them in hand and something goes sideways. You don't have to go through the process already. So
I
use a
love that.
checklist and the other one as a we do kind of moment. Yes, they're going to have to do it on their own. That's where the book comes in. So you
Mhm.
can do all of that with them. So you parents know
Mhm.
100%. They know, and that helps the parent transition too, because it's not just about your kid.
Oh, I
It is
know.
about them, but it
Mhm.
is about you too, and it gets your fear, your
Mhm.
anxiety as a parent to be a lot less, knowing that you prepared them in the best way that you could.
Yeah. Yeah, because our anxiety rubs off on them too. So
Mm.
we have to make sure that we aren't adding to their stress level for sure. Well, Dan, thank you so much for being with us today. I've enjoyed it so much. This is a love of mine, helping people and families do that next transition. And I'm so glad that we have people out there helping, and everyone should check out all of your stuff so that they know what to do next.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.